Welcome everybody. As many of you know, we're going to do a little housekeeping in advance of introductions here. We're most welcome to ask questions through the chat functionality of Zoom and also the Q&A, both of which highlight when you mouse over the ribbon at the bottom or the top. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this at this point. And then even though we have a formal presentation, some introductions and then a formal presentation, throughout the presentation, please feel free to record your questions in the chat box of the Q&A, and we will get to them. If you're thinking about questions going along, that's a good way to make sure you don't forget them. And we'll answer them as we progress. Michael, you can leave the hat on. Look pretty good.
You want me to leave the hat on? Good. I'm going out golfing.
Michael, how's it going, buddy?
I'm good. For some reason, it wasn't letting me on the iPad. I was the only one. I was in the meeting twice, but I was the only one there, so I knew that couldn't be right. So I'm doing this over my phone, so we're all right.
Looks
good.
You're good.
Thanks for joining again.
Yeah, and I can only stay till about 2:30, 2:40, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
You have to figure out how to work me in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah. We'll do it right from after Jerome does a little intro. Yeah.
Good. Perfect.
Yeah, but thanks for making time for that.
So welcome everybody. As I mentioned, we have a fortunate to once again we did this last week with our friends from Zoetic, and as many of you know, I'm super keen on impact type things, and our friend Raymond had introduced Zoetic to me just a few weeks ago. I had not known about it prior to that, and just for the record, I know Raymond and a bunch of his colleagues because of my friend Chris Davino, and I just wanted to give him credit for the nexus of connectivity here, as it's important to know how these things come about. The essence of what you're going to see today is not only impact, but it can impact in terms of energy and saving money, but it also is a recurring revenue model, as well as has a total addressable market that is massive. Everybody who has an air conditioner in a commercial or otherwise business or building can use what they're doing. So the opportunity is rather large. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and hand it over to Jerome. And if Jerome, you want to introduce yourself and your colleagues, and then go ahead and give us an overview, that would be awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arthur. And I'd like to thank all of you that were part of the establishing this opportunity in this call, and welcome to all of our guests. To get straight to the point, we are here to talk about a breakthrough technology and opportunity. Zoetic is a company that was formed some years ago, and we are bringing forward to you one of our leading technologies, and that is that of refrigeration. Refrigeration, dealing with Freon in particular, and the chemicals that are used in the cooling arena. Of course, back in Montreal, as part of the Montreal Protocol of the climate negotiations, it was required that Freon be banned in 2020. So therefore, alternatives to Freon had to be created to meet the need of cooling, refrigeration, and beyond. Our product that we're offering today offers all of the environmental requirements of Montreal, but we go a step further. Our product offers a savings, cost savings, due to the fact of the makeup of our product, and we are offering, we will give you more information on the details of the technology. We are partnered with the company that created this technology, and we, Zoetic, are on the verge of purchasing majority ownership of that company. That is what is driving the subject matter today, the raise. We are literally raising and have begun to raise. So we've successfully raised a large portion of the $5 million that we seek to raise originally for the purchase or the 51% ownership of Alltemp, which is the refrigerant company, which will make Zoetic the leading refrigeration technology in the world, second to none, because no one can match us on the amount of savings associated with our refrigerant. We have here today one of our board members, Michael Phillip, and I want to introduce him and allow him to share a little bit about himself and why he has chosen to embrace Zoetic going forward into this space. So, Michael, let me immediately turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jerome. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I got to know Jerome and Avery over the last 6 to 12 months, partly through my son, who is the CEO and manager of Reykjavik Geothermal, one of our portfolio companies. We had a lot of talks back and forth and came to understand that we had a lot of things in common, not just on the business side, but in terms of our passion for conservation, for the environment, for combating global climate change, and some other things. So the relationship evolved on a very natural basis, and it focused all around this investment in alltemp. And our background, my background, I was a banker, a global banker with Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and Credit Suisse for 25 years in New York and London. And the last 15 years for Deutsche and Credit Suisse, I was on both of their boards and focused on the Middle East and Africa. So when I left Credit Suisse in 2008, we started a family investment company called Ambata, Ambata Capital, to focus on renewable energy and what we were calling sustainability, waste, water, food security, energy efficiency. We bought 49% of a geothermal development company in Iceland in 2010 called Reykjavik Geothermal. We brought in some other investors in 2011, and over the last several years, we've been developing large utility scale geothermal power plants in Africa, specifically in Ethiopia. We have 2 large plants in Ethiopia, 500 megawatts each. Some smaller projects, medium-sized projects that we're looking at in Mexico with Engie, the French utility, and smaller projects in the Caribbean. That has been a very, that got us heavily involved in the whole renewable space. On the conservation side, I've been on the board of World Wildlife Fund for 6 years, 2011 to 2017. I've been on their national council for probably more like 25 years. And so, our interest in climate change, conservation, and renewable energy was very compatible to the kind of things that Jerome was doing. So refrigeration for us is something that, it's not our area of expertise. We're more involved in renewable energy, and now we're quite actively involved in actually the food space, food systems, and agriculture. But, when we look at climate change, refrigeration is clearly one of the key elements that can really make a difference when you're talking about reducing carbon footprints and making a real difference in climate change. So when Jerome and Avery came to us with this technology, it was very interesting. We've done a lot of work and due diligence to, see that the technology works, and the partners involved have, given us very high regards for the projects that they've been doing. So we've recently introduced, in fact, this week we had a significant call with my friends in Qatar that run the Qatar Free Zone Authority. They see the potential in this. They would be quite interested to develop this, on a regional scale. So we're starting to have conversations around that. So, and we certainly see lots of potential, not only in the US and Europe, but in places like the Middle East and Africa. And Jerome and I both have very extensive relationships in Africa. So we're happy to be involved in the project, excited to talk to all of you about it. Jerome and Avery can give you the details. Trent is here as well. So we'll turn it back to Jerome.
Thank you very much, Michael. And Thank you for being a part of the board of directors of Zoetic and for your commitment to resolving the climate problems of the world, but also helping to stimulate economies with the cost savings program that we offer at Zoetic. As we mentioned about Zoetic, we formed the company some years ago. Avery, who is my co-partner, and you'll hear from Avery Hong, who is the CEO of the company, and I serve as the chairman. We founded the company with the intent of developing or building relationships with the best-in-class technologies that we could apply to meet the greatest needs of the world. At the time, we recognized that as a need for electricity and a need for clean water. But with the pressures of climate change and the impacts of climate change, and also with currently the global economy, we are faced with the challenge of how do we meet the greatest demands of the world, but do it in a way that is affordable to governments, to municipalities, to communities, and to individuals. The refrigerant that we bring forth fulfills all of those goals. Unlike many of the technologies that we have looked at, of course, many of them are costly, but effective. This particular technologies saves us money when we need to save money the most. When we're talking about up to a 40% savings in electricity or in power to cool or to refrigerate, this can be substantial, especially when you're speaking of large buildings or even countries. We're very much involved in Africa, where I've been appointed as the Goodwill Ambassador for Trade and Investment by the Pan-African Parliament, which is the governance arm of the African Union, which represents all 55 countries of Africa. So now the African Union has made it clear that they've got to figure out ways to deal with issues like COVID-19, to deal with the issues that are affecting their economy, and how do they generate the funds to be able to address these issues. Our technology gives them an opportunity to do so by an application of our refrigerant into government buildings and private businesses throughout the continent. The cost savings itself is going to create large avenues of money that can be reapplied in areas where they're needed the most. The technology, right now we are manufacturing the refrigerant at our facility outside Eugene, Oregon. We are set up to manufacture about 1 million pounds per month, which is substantial, with plans to increase that ability so that we can meet demand. We have pilots that have already been implemented in many places. We are now cooling the data center for Southwest Airlines in Dallas, Texas. We've successfully done a pilot at Harry Potter Village, a part of Universal in Florida. We are in W Hotels, Starwoods. We are in Hilton Hotels. We have signed an agreement to begin a pilot at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas, and also the 5 million square foot Dallas Market Center. We are in talks with the NBA right now, who wants us to bring our refrigerant in to all of its arenas across the United States. We're going to start with the Indiana Pacers Arena. We are working with universities. We are now in talks with Xavier University. We'll be in Ohio. We will be conferring with them on tomorrow so that we might apply our refrigerant in their new athletic center. So there's a lot of interest as we continue with companies like Merck, one of the largest or the largest shipping company in the world, has 320,000 shipping containers that are refrigerated containers. Imagine what the savings would be with the MRSA if you took out all of the Freon, the R22s that have been banned, or the R134s that have been banned, or the 420s that will soon be banned, and replace it with a refrigerant that cuts their savings or saves them somewhere between 20 and 40%. That can be tremendous. So we're seeking the Walmarts, seeking the large brands right now that can apply this refrigerant and the savings be substantial, generating revenue that surely at this time of economic challenge can be utilized in other places. As I said, in Africa, we've been asked by the African Union to begin pilots there. The good thing about the African Union is that it represents 55 countries of the continent. We will do a pilot at the African Union. That data will be shared with the heads of state and the ministers of energy throughout the continent. We could literally begin in the public sector to apply our refrigerant into government buildings. We're also simultaneously in talks with the private sector. In places like Nigeria, we are talking to large hotel brands in Nigeria and throughout Africa, so that there may be application there as well. So we're really excited about this opportunity. The first step, of course, is to complete the purchase to become majority owner of the refrigeration company. That process has already began, which has sparked, again, I will mention, the raise that we are presenting to you today. And it will make us, put us at the tip of the spear with respect to refrigeration, cold storage, and the many opportunities that are associated in that arena. So let me now take the time to introduce you to the CEO of Zoetic. His name is Avery Hung. Avery is coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, and we'll talk to you more in details about the vision, about the mission, and the plan going forward for Zoetic. So Avery, if you'll take over.
Okay. Thanks, Jerome. I know Michael might have to drop. So before I jump in, I was also going to flash the 2-minute video. Arthur, I didn't check the chat box. Did anybody have any? And maybe something specific?
No, there's none as yet. I did give him the heads up that Michael would be bouncing out early. I know others are thinking the same thing. And I know that you're going to get into the detail, but perhaps right after the video, you can mention how simple this is to apply. In other words, it's not a big retrofit. It's not a big technical problem to get the product into any building refrigerant or heat exchanger. So I think the simplicity of that also speaks to the potential of its success. So at some point I would cover that.
Yeah, we'll touch on that. You make a great point, Arthur, about framing this, kind of connecting the dots to what Jerome had been sharing about the vision. And we say best-in-class technology. Well, what does it actually mean? You know, is it an ambition? Is it actually a process that you go through? What's the sort of steps in your vetting? And we made it very simple. For us, it was the 4 I's. So it has to be innovative. This whole idea of breakthrough, right? Commodity stuff or marginally better was no interest to us. And then it had to be impactful, and that has to do with the sort of I guess the generation of this whole initiative from Jerome and his background, very substantial background in environmental conservation, climate change. So we said, okay, you take the innovative ideas, the most impactful that are speaking to scale, and then you have to have immediacy. Now that was maybe more coming from my side, or sort of restlessness, because I've been involved in, not spend too much time, but a little bit of my background. I spent a sizable part of my career in the clean tech space, kind of myriad of different projects, exposed to all kinds of technologies. So it was a interesting path, I guess I walked. A lot of the technologies, of course, just washed out, but we stayed at it, right? We were very persistent. And one of the big things was, okay, this whole idea of trial and error. We've got to find technologies that are ready to go. So that immediacy part became very important to us. And then the 4th I is the investability, which is obviously basics, but it has to be emphasized. right? Coming from some of the work that Jerome and I had done in the biofuel space, you're looking at regulatory support or some kind of subsidies or something to make the model work. And I just didn't like to live that way. It was just like sand under your feet. So we said, okay, if we really break this down and we're going to go pursue, and we interacted with so many different companies, but this alltemp one is the one that emerged. And Jerome and Michael Arthur have laid the groundwork about why this is so compelling. I'll just hit on a couple points, and then we're just going to, as I said, show just a very brief video for those of you that are not only new to this, but also maybe hadn't had a chance to review any of the materials prior. This energy savings part is what separates this. The environmental profile is very, very compelling, and it counts. Now, not as much as the energy savings right now in terms of the conversations we're having and the interactions we're having, whether it's a Qatar or whether it's the AU or some major corporate. Everybody is unified in the sense they've got to figure out how to reduce their operating costs. And we talked to one of the major cruise lines, and we didn't know this kind of going into the conversation, but they spend over 50% of their electricity when they're at port on cooling, because you can't have mold and mildew and all these things kind of festering. So all of these assets are unused right now, but they still have to operate. And now we're hitting, for this part of the world, we're hitting the summer months. So all of these things started to factor into our calculation about how we were going to roll this out, what the low-hanging fruit were going to be. And I'll walk through some of that when I talk about the revenue models and what some of our assumptions are and the inputs into the pro formas. But let me just say this before I go into the video. A critical part to this, when we talked about this technology, it has to be paired with something, right? And what's that? Existing relationships. So we don't use the term networking. Networking doesn't have enough meaning for us. They have to be relationships into C-suite, folks like Arthur that introduced us to all these very significant family offices that are also holders of a lot of the assets that we're talking about helping, right? Hotel owners, casino owners, et cetera, mall operators. So the pieces started to come together, this elite technology, and then we could leverage the existing relationships. And basically what we've just done is in some sense replicating or trying to replicate Jerome, right? So we added Michael, we added Trammell Crow, folks like Raymond and Jan, I don't think Jan is on, but Jan Harkey, and other people essentially to put this group together that can take this technology that is ready to go quickly into the marketplace. So our goal is to push this thing aggressively. I'll talk about competitive nature and all that shortly, but that gives you an idea of the perspective we have, the approach to take this out and then to plant the flags in major opportunities, the corporates, the chains, actually I shouldn't say corporates, the corporate chains, and then these countries like Qatar, right, which 80% of their electricity is spent on cooling. And they have the World Cup. So there's also this element for folks like them about highlighting these kind of innovative and impactful solutions when the global spotlight is coming on them. So it's a very interesting time for them as well. And thanks to Michael for setting that up. We had that conversation yesterday. So I'm going to put the video up. I apologize if it gets a little bit choppy, but I'll run it off my laptop here.
Hey, Riyadh, screen.
Oh, hold on one second, Arthur.
Take your time. It's all right.
Yep. Let's see here. Okay.
Okay, we can see it now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay.
Alltemp is a disruptive solution that changes the technology of refrigerants. With its worldwide reach, alltemp reduces energy consumption while not damaging the Earth's ozone layer. Alltemp refrigerants are designed using proprietary lubricating polar exchange fluids, which provide immediate savings on energy draw without any equipment modifications or compressor oil changeouts. Air conditioning, refrigeration, and heat pump applications can have the optimal balance of performance, environmental sustainability, safety, and cost. Alltemp is a non-flammable, non-synthetic, self-lubricating formula which reduces the wear on equipment compared to other refrigerants with A1 classification, whether large-scale, commercial, industrial, transportation, and home units, which are even mobile units. Alltemp's line of refrigerants bring new savings and eliminate the ozone threat to our planet. This compound allows Alltemp refrigerants to flow easier through the cooling system, which also results in less wear and predicted longer life of your cooling system equipment infrastructure. Alltemp is already in use by Fortune 500 companies around the world. These corporate leaders are always looking for every financial advantage, and with Alltemp, they keep ahead of their competitors. Major Alltemp corporate customers have already confirmed what the independent test labs have revealed. Alltemp is saving energy today. Alltemp creates and produces non-toxic solutions that both reduce the use of energy consumption for cooling without sacrificing efficiency and removes the threat cooling refrigerants historically have had on our planet's essential protective ozone layer. What we strive to accomplish at Alltemp is to create a safer place to live, a healthier planet, a better tomorrow for all of us. Alltemp puts you ahead of the global refrigerant requirements.
Okay. And Arthur, will you take a second if anybody had any questions or they had a reaction to something? Again, we'll cover the details, but I just wanted to keep taking some pauses here.
All set for now, and we can see the PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, good. So the group had shared already about some of the obviously the history and the I guess the progression of Zoetic. You know, this idea of this platform with these kind of elite ideas again is ambitious, and Alltemp is the first one to essentially be ready to come off that platform. Initially, we were really working with them on a sort of a joint venture type of basis, and it was only in the last couple months, and this is something that Jerome had already kind of touched on from his initial remarks, was the opportunity for us to actually advance the relationship in a much different fashion, which is to get control. And maybe, Jerome, just take a second before I go into the particulars, because I think it helps sort of frame the why Zoetic. Maybe just share a little bit about your interaction with the founder of Alltemp, and then I can get into some of the particulars, and then also about the transaction itself. But I thought that was very helpful when you shared that last Friday.
Yes. While visiting the manufacturing facility of Alltemp outside of Eugene, Oregon, I had the opportunity to spend time with the founder and the IP holder of the technology, who shared with me, and I was curious, why Zoetic, with a technology that is just so awesome, that is so timely, and all of the companies and individuals who would probably love to be a part of this, what is I asked the owner's interest in Zoetic. He made it very clear to me at the time that he has spent 10 years developing this technology, and he believes that it is second to none. But that's where his ability ended. His goal was to be able to move the Alltemp technology into the marketplace, but he needed an individual company that had global reach, both in the public and the private sector, with countries, heads of state, companies, and individuals who, one, embrace the whole climate idea of being able to reduce CO2 to the atmosphere and make the climate better for generations to come. But two, be able to recognize the values of cost savings. The owner believed that Zoetic was the perfect fit to be able to accomplish this goal. He said to me, Jerome, I have worked for a long time on this technology. I need you to take it to the promised land. And we have his full confidence that we are able to do that, as we have our own confidence in our ability to get it done, because our network is vast, our reach is vast, and our commitment is just as vast. So it was a no-brainer for him, and he is excited about how far we have come to date and how far we can go into the future.
Okay. Thanks, Jerome. I'm just going to go through these, and again, if you have timely questions, rather than wait till the end, we have no problem to address them in the moment when they're fresh. Just to flash this, we mentioned some of these, but I wanted to highlight a couple. And there's a coming slide that shows the categories, but these large clients, right? We're looking, as we said, and this is, I'll be honest, I mean, I give them all kinds of credit for securing these, number of these on their own. We're just able to obviously take it to a different level, but they did put in the work. However they got there, they cannot just kind of get on the phone and call one of their close contacts. So they had to put in a legwork. And I think that in some sense, maybe define how their sales and marketing game plan was going to be. Well, we've of course kind of flipped that on its ear, but we're in alignment, obviously, that you have to go for these chains to get in there. It's essentially one relationship, but you might walk into, as a Walmart, it's 14,000 stores, or IKEA, or Jerome had mentioned Maersk, over 300,000 refrigerated containers. So on here, you'll see just a sampling, the municipalities, there's hotels, hospitals. We did actually Sanofi and Zoetic Global that you see on there. They're relevant because they actually just did their installations, their pilots. And both of those, well, actually, Sanofi has a facility outside Boston, and then they have one in India, near Goa, I think. And then Zoetic Global is the largest pharma in India. So their savings were immediate. The payback periods on these things are very, very abbreviated. But it gives you a sampling of the successful pilots. They've never had an unsuccessful pilot. Alltemp hasn't. And everybody converts over to customers. And this is where we are right now in the process. The development process is to really to scale up. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. So a lot of this we've already covered, and it was covered in the video. The one thing I will emphasize that just a little bit more, I think it was Arthur that was saying again, it's like the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. So you don't have to tear down walls. You don't need a permit. You don't need to change any equipment. You don't need to change any compressor oil, valves, fittings, etc. All you do is vacuum out the incumbent refrigerant, and then you replace it with the all-temp refrigerant. As you can see, it's non-toxic, non-flammable. So actually, it's A1 safety rating. What does that mean? Is there an AA? No, A1 is the highest safety rating by the industry folks. So one thing I would say, by the way, on the fact that it's a true drop-in. Again, we're very careful with the language that we're not saying retrofit, because retrofit in our minds is implying some kind of equipment swap out, but that's not what we're talking about. Let the HVAC hardware folks stay in their lane, and we're attacking from the gas side. And it is really is a wide open opportunity. It's just never been something. There's no innovation really in the cooling space, the hardware side or the gas side. Some movement on trying to find more, I guess, environmentally friendly kind of refrigerants. But the CapEx spend, the R&D, it's not that much from the chemical guys. I mean, they're commodity guys, right? So why would they, in some sense? What would motivate them to kind of change their stripes and innovate? So the innovation has to come from outside. That is standard kind of classic story, and that's the case here. But when you go through this checklist of energy savings and environmental, and the fact that it's this drop-in replacement, no toxicity, no flammability, it made life for us very easy to spark these conversations and quick commitments to get into the pilot program for so many of the entities and the countries that we've met with. So as you know, as tying to our history, we just had never come across a technology that was so applicable and was ready to go at scale like this. So and this is just the thing about the non-flammable, non-toxicity. I won't go into the details. Some of you may obviously recognize some of the refrigerants. All I'll mention is that the qualifier L, M, and H just has to do with pressure, low, medium, high pressure. R22, the one that sits in the middle, is Freon, so that's the Kleenex of the refrigerant world. But why this is important, Alltemp's product line addresses the bulk of the market. And we didn't put it on here because it's in some sense final stages, but the 4th generation refrigerants is HFOs, and it's being driven by European car companies, EU's mandated usage of it. Alltemp has an HFO product. They actually are using Honeywell and Chemours' own product as the feedstock, and then they're putting on essentially their secret sauce. So they're getting about 16% energy savings in the HFO bucket as well. So effectively, and this is one of the draws for us, we wanted to see that they're going to keep advancing this, optimizing and staying on the cutting edge, and not sort of just settle in because they already have strong coverage of all of the legacy refrigerants. Yeah. And this is just I apologize, if on my screen it's covering the numbers a little bit. The savings is 27.7%. This was a Verizon data center in Englewood, Colorado. They've also done a data center with AT&T, and then Jerome had mentioned the data center in Southwest Airlines at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. And this is a sweet spot for us. You're talking about controlled environment. They have 24/7 cooling requirements. I mean, you're talking about core essential assets. So this is again one of the areas, and one of our team members is kind of taking the lead to really push into the data center opportunity. So as we walk through this, and you're kind of gathering up all of the applications, it is honestly across the board, cold storage, supply chain, all these kind of things. So, and here's just a breakdown of some of them. The universities, the grocers, retail. They did a pilot at Gelson's, and of course Costco. The hospitals there at Mount Sinai, and we've had a lot of conversations with, again, major hotel operators, which again, the facilities are basically empty. So they have got to engage in these kind of solutions, and we're again a very sort of easy pathway for them to meaningfully reduce their operating expenses. So,
Hey, Avery.
Yeah, go ahead, Arthur.
In the prior slide where you demonstrate the savings, are
Yes.
these pilots turned into business?
Yes.
For example,
To date, everyone ended up, yes, every one of them converted into buying customer. Yeah, their conversion is 100%.
Great.
Okay. And then, Jerome, you want to just hit on this, since obviously you're the one that, with the close connections to the environmental conservation. This is sort of our global tailwinds slide. There's so much of this feedback that we've been getting that we thought it would be, again, good to share, because there's kind of multiple aspects of this that are really driving the adoption and the embrace of it. So, Jerome, we just want to hit a couple points about everything from Montreal to some of the activity on the developing world and growing middle class.
Absolutely. And as a result of my background, which is mainly in the environmental conservation space, I'm the former chairman of the National Wildlife Federation, the nation's largest member-supported conservation organization, and as well heading the Apollo Alliance, which was the largest coalition on clean energy ever with its 19 million members. And our ultimate goal was for the country to realize that there were economic benefits in green jobs, that it can be an economic stimulant to the U.S. economy. With that said, in the many years that I've spent involved in climate negotiations and as an advocate for climate change, the need to replace refrigerants was a top priority, considering the adverse impact of existing refrigerants on the environment and, of course, on the ozone layer. So it was a no-brainer. But as we approached many of those that care much about the environment and saw the need and the benefits of getting away from Freon as a refrigerant, the conversation quickly rolled over into the benefits and the cost savings, which really became not more important, but currently with the current situations with the economy, became the topic of conversation. How could I meet the Montreal standard? How could I produce and utilize a product that is environmentally friendly? But most importantly at this time, how could I do it and save money? How could I generate savings in a major way that could help the economic status of my company or my country or even my home? We've sat down with Crow Holdings, and Crow is the company out of Dallas, Texas, that at one point was the nation's largest they handle management of $1 billion of residential space and was the nation's largest landlord. With that said, Trammell Crow, who is the president of the company, became a board member to Zoetic. And these are the type people, along with people like Michael Phillip, along with people like David West, the former All-Star in the NBA, who saw that this product could be utilized in the hotel space, in the residential space, in the warehouse space, in the sports arenas, could offer substantial savings, and that the benefits were just unbelievable and surely could not be overlooked. So we are now well positioned because we are about to acquire the company that stands alone in this arena anywhere in the world. No one can match up to Zoetic alltemp with respect to cost savings, the economic, plus the environmental benefits of this product. And so this is an opportunity for us to engage you, to be involved with this technology that goes into the future and is sustainable, that will save money in a major way sustainably. And so we just appreciate this opportunity. So Avery, I'll turn it back over to you. But we have built relationships all over the country and all over the world that is gaining interest on a daily basis.
Okay. And one thing I was going to connect to some of Jerome's comments. This, these are there's articles out there, right? And these increasing conversations, which are great to see, like the Global Cooling Prize, which the Rocky Mountain Institute, Richard Branson, a number of other very prominent groups are involved with. So you're seeing the sort of screaming need for innovation in the HVAC space. Again, that has to be done on the hardware side. At least that's we're fully supportive, but we have to focus on the gas because the gas is a low-hanging fruit. So up here you see from the International Energy Agency, this tripling of units by 2050. Europe, this regular occurrence now of these in unbearably hot summers. And I didn't know this until, again, the last couple of months, that only 5% of homes in Europe actually have AC. So that was a little bit of sort of a shock to me. I mean, I used to work in the EU, but and now what's happening is that, again, this kind of sort of COVID-19 has made these considerations even more, or pulled them more to the forefront, right? So this pipeline, we've talked about it, right? What's driving so much of this, as we said, is the relationships that already exist. So we do not have to climb ladders. We're basically entering in at the top. And that's one of the things, too, with the investors that are coming in right now. It appears everybody is bringing something significant to the table. Our new board members bringing something significant to the table, which, again, is all kinds of business opportunities. So we don't want to get too far out ahead of ourselves. Right now we're kind of gathering assembling our list, and then we're going to prioritize screen, low-hanging fruit, paying customers up front, etc. That is what the stage is now, but it is a wave of interest. So as an emerging company, we've got to pace ourselves. So the good thing is that we already have in the toolbox is the leading technology in this space with, again, blanket coverage effectively for the refrigerant market. Here's a couple of the pilots. We had mentioned these before. Eco Hotel is in Nigeria, and let me just touch on this real quickly. So because obviously it's a core question, especially making this acquisition. All the IP was developed in-house, so there's no co-development issues or co-claims from a university or some other chemist or somebody. The IP is held by the company, and there's a composition and a process manufacturing patent. They've done a lot of these, and this is all things that they've pushed out on their own. This is nothing that Zoetic has done. We're just going to simply support what they've been doing. One thing on the IP side, we are going to continue right now with the avoidance of any kind of potential entanglements and co-develop. We don't need to. Right now, what they have, as I said, covering those 4 categories already. So we'll stay with the in-house activity. And then one of the things, by the way, and I'll show it in the pro formas here, the R&D number they had very low number, and I just think it was like a plug number for them. So our number may be coming in very low as well, but we did try and insert something more meaningful in there. And our view is not only on the refrigerant side, but there potentially could be some enhancements, maybe even certain specifications on equipment that are more in alignment with the alltemp refrigerant as opposed to something from Chemours or Honeywell. So those are the kind of things that we're exploring right now. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to flash this, and we can, of course, share this with folks. Obviously, this is a very steep growth curve here. And in this outlying year, 5 years out, we have almost $4 billion as a top-line number. Just to give context, and Arthur has sort of hinted at it, our estimate is that the addressable global market is $400 billion over the next 10, maybe 15 years. When you start to break it down, this is, in all honesty, is an unaddressed market, because right now the only reason you buy is if you're getting new equipment or you have a leak. But what about motivation to just swap it out because of the intensity of the cost savings? So that is what's changing right now. When Jerome mentioned Harry Potter, that part of the Harry Potter park that we started at was only 4.5 years old. The equipment is new. The refrigerant is not leaking out. Why make the change? Because the savings was 33%. So Universal decided immediately after the successful test to put it throughout their holdings. So it's very interesting, again, to see this sort of unfold, and all our job is to do is to enhance it. On the revenue, just so you understand the modeling, the split is 75% from just straight refrigerant sales. The other 25% is for those that are going to finance through a shared cost savings program. And we're developing that, and Michael is helping us with that as well. The gross margins are around 65%. And we have, again, our selling, our commission numbers were drastically lower than alltemp, because, again, alltemp was looking to use wholesale market and third parties, and they had 35%, I think 36% commissions. None of that is really relevant to Zoetic. I mean, we're working with some partners and things, but we're not even in the ballpark for commissions of that scale. We can drive so much of this through the in-house and through the leadership. So that just gives you an idea. Again, to match this, I'm going to touch on this in a second about the scale up, but that does give you an idea. And we're not, pegging to 1% because, it's like some kind of large market opportunity. When we walk through the existing portfolio and made certain assumptions about everything from the annual topping off to how long it would take to work through a major chain like a Walmart. I mean, it's the 14,000 stores. That's not going to happen in a year. We did our best estimates, but that gives you an idea of how some insight into how we arrived at the pro formas. So we had shared, again, about the IP being in-house. This is the company, Alltemp, and a production facility in Roseburg, Oregon. The equity is in the bulk of it is in the hands of the 3 board members and their family members. This is the founder, the CEO, and then the COO, who was one of the early stage investors. One thing I checked, I think it's on the next slide. Yes, the acquisition of this ultimate goal, obviously, is to take 100% ownership and to take it private. So I don't know if anyone had in just their prep for the Zoom that Alltemp is actually publicly listed. It was a reverse merger a handful of years ago, and it's just a bulletin board pink sheet, virtually no volume. It did serve as an assist in some way, honestly, because they kept the valuation down. I mean, we've said it, it's a anchor. They had raised money, I believe, last year at 25 million. I can't remember how much they took in. I think maybe 1.6 million, but it was at 25 mil pre-money. And we've got them down. I mean, you can see the deal basically under $10 million for the valuation. Part of it's timing. Part of it is to this best of both worlds combination. But the timing for us was ideal. They were ready to go, but they needed somebody to take this to the next level. And we have a lot of experience in our team. We bulked this part up through not only members, but also through consultants and some different folks that are going to be advising for us to make sure that we're really properly set up for this scale up. Oh, and then there's a mention, of course, and this is important. We don't understate this. As we go out, a lot of this feedback we're getting is, can you highlight us? Can you showcase these installations, right? Because I understand it. It's to get some of the benefit from these adoption and embrace of these kind of solutions. Also, just the fact that they're undertaking something on the cost saving side that could help, right? Whether it's shareholder digestion or just for the general audience. But this is something that obviously Jerome can speak to make the rounds, to highlight these, to give back to those that are entrusting us with their assets, their holdings, right? To show some kind of immediate, tangible, significant gains on their operational side. This is, by the way, on the use of funds side, the entire round is, all the money is going into the business. So just so we're clear, the ownership of Alltemp never made a request, demand for money to go to them. They're in it for the long haul. They're looking at this, obviously, impact, but legacy project as well for the founder. So all monies go into, as you can see, everything from enhancements, automation enhancements at the current facility to additional IP activity, underwriting for the pilot, and then just ongoing, obviously, the operations, including, as you can see, some of the joint venture activity. And they have a very strong relationship right now in India. India is an enormous market opportunity that's already in place. So the remainder, we started this thing recently. And Trammell was, obviously, I can share that, one of the investors that come into this round. When we were laying this out last week, we had 5 because of the benefits, obviously, from Arthur setting this up. We've got half of the round is taken. Maybe 3 million potentially. We'll know by the conclusion of today. So it's between 2.5 and 2 million remains. It's at pre-money of 20%. And so the ownership percentage remaining is 12.5%. Okay? And this is just the last thing that we wanted to touch on. And then I apologize. We didn't leave too much time for questions, but the exit strategy. We have been in, this is internal conversations, of course, with counsel and advisors, and this is the same thing for the Alltemp folks. Their expectation is that one of the majors, you're talking about Archem, Honeywell, Chemours, old DuPont, to approach. Right? This is nothing, again, that they have in their bucket. We did a extensive IP search. and we came up with nothing substantial. In terms of competitors, by the way, there's only one other company that we know, and they only address R22, and their business model is much different than ours. And again, they don't have this blanket coverage of the marketplace, but there's just not a lot of activity in the gas side of the cooling arena. So we're obviously, we have fiduciary duty. We're open to it, right? We're doing everything we can head down, and we're going to push this out and, of course, take care of the scale up. But this has been in our ear since we first started talking to them. The other thing is that we've been approached by some different folks in the financial community and bankers about, this would be a very interesting thing to take into the public market, energy efficiency driven listing, right, as opposed to things around the generation side. And you'd have the allure of Fortune 500s and chains, and as Arthur mentioned, the recurring revenues. One thing, by the way, I apologize, I forgot to touch on that in the going over the financials. The sales, the shared cost savings is that ongoing revenue stream, but there is also an ongoing revenue stream from the refrigerant sales side because of annual topping off. Just like you had to put in the old days, put Freon canister into your car. Annual topping off can vary anywhere between 3 and 30%. Now, just to highlight Maersk quickly, the estimate is that they have about a 25% leakage rate for their reefers, their refrigerated containers. So you're turning over that whole portfolio, that whole install, maybe every 4 or 5 years. So that is a very important number when you're talking about 320,000 reefers. So we're trying to gather up as much information and insight as we can into what that topping off is. Right now, for our purposes, we just went to the low end. I think we did an annual topping off estimate of 8%. But really, it's a case by case basis. But that gives you an idea of sort of some of the attraction if we were to go that route. But I will say this: obviously, the Zoetic ownership, the board, and then the alltemp owners are in alignment on this. Right? We take care of our core duties, the task list, push this out, secure more of these sizable deals. And then we'll do the scale up, which entails bringing additional production online. One of the things, by the way, is the existing facility can absorb $500 million in sales. Right, it is substantial. Right, coming out of a relatively small facility. But what we need to have is protection. We just can't have any downtime. And it's relevant to this because they actually were offline early last year because they had a weather incident. So it took them a couple months to bring the facility back up, and we just can't obviously risk even something basic like that. So the second facility we're looking at in the States would be in most likely in Dallas in partnership with Trammell and the support of the Crow Holdings. So that gives you an idea about the offering. They'll kind of walk through, and then Arthur, I'll turn it back to you or Jerome for final comments or any questions, and we have a couple minutes left.
Yeah,
but thanks everybody for the time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap it up here quick. One last question that I have: what percentage of the public shares is owned by the controlling shareholders? Do you know?
I don't know. I know there's, I think 22.8% is in the hands of the pink sheet.
Right. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Great.
But I don't think the owners. I don't think the owners have much of the pinks. Their family might, but theirs is held in the founder's stock. Yeah.
So we are going to have to wrap it up here real quick, but we'll definitely put everybody in touch with Avery and Jerome. Do you guys want to have some closing remarks, Jerome?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Arthur, and thank you for your team and putting this together and all those that joined the call. I just look at this as an opportunity that we can make a real difference throughout the world from an environmental perspective, but also help stimulate the economies of different entities, as I mentioned, countries, companies, individuals. And I just look forward to all of you that will consider being a partner in this endeavor. And I welcome it. And I thank all of you that attended today. And if you have any additional questions, please contact Arthur, Avery, or myself. And we'll look forward to interacting with you further. So again, thank you very much for attending.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Avery. Thank you, everybody, for giving us your time today. We'll be recording this and posting it on the Family Office Insights website. And don't wait for that if you have questions. And if you want to share the opportunity with others, it's always welcome. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Arthur. Thank you.